Welcome to another lesson for the IELTS academic exam. And in this lesson, we're going to be looking at writing task 1 and how to do multiple graph essays. So let's get started and talk about how we can do multiple graph essays for writing task 1. So whenever you have multiple graphs, you will have two different types of graphs. And in the case that we're looking at today, we have a pie graph and a table chart. But you could have any combination of a line graph and pie graph, a table chart, and any combination of these, and you will have to write about both. But as we'll discover as we go through this strategy today, that sometimes having multiple graphs actually helps you structure and plan your essay a little more simply when it comes to deciding what you need to write about and the main features that you need to discuss in your essay. So let's get started and first have a little overview of what's involved in writing a task 1 essay and multiple graphs. So there basically are 5 steps in completing the task for writing task 1. You need to analyze the question, you need to identify the main features, you'll write an introduction, you'll write an overview, and then you'll write your detailed paragraphs. So for example, as you look at the question that you're dealing with here, you'll not only have the diagrams and charts that you need to deal with. First of all, you'll have a description of what you're seeing. The pie chart shows the main reasons why agricultural land becomes less productive, and the table shows how these causes affected 3 regions of the world during the 1990s. So that's a description of what you're seeing. And then you have your task. Summarize the information, select and report the main features, and make comparisons where relevant. So as you follow these steps and you complete the task and write your essay, your final product, your final essay, will have 4 paragraphs. You'll have an introduction. In the second paragraph, you'll have an overview or summary of both the graph and the chart together. And then in paragraph 3, you'll be writing about the first main feature, which again, in this case, you'll simply choose and write about the pie chart. And then in paragraph 4, you'll write about the table and make any comparisons that are relevant or that you need to make. So this is how your essay will be looking when it's finished with these 4 paragraphs. And I just want to mention that you want to make sure that you don't write more than 4 paragraphs or fewer than 4. If you write fewer than 4, you won't have everything you need to accomplish the task. If you write more than 4, you will end up doing more than what is required. And in this way, you won't be accomplishing the task effectively. One of the things that often distracts students when they're doing the IELTS exam and the writing section is the number of words that have to be written. And in writing task 1, you're given 20 minutes to write 150 words. And this will not be a problem if you stick to these 4 paragraphs. And there's 2 things to consider here. First of all, you won't have to count words, making sure that you've written enough. It will be no problem to write 150 words. The greater danger is that you will write too much. So make sure you limit yourself to these 4 paragraphs so that you don't write unnecessary information, you don't write too many details, and that your essay does not go beyond approximately 200 words, because it's also, if your essay is too long, it means that you've done things that you didn't need to do, and you won't get the score you need for task completion. You know, these 4 paragraphs will ensure that you meet 2 important criteria when it comes to the writing section. There are 4 criteria: task achievement, coherence and cohesiveness, grammar, and vocabulary. Grammar and vocabulary are a part of every IELTS section. It goes without question because you need to have that high intermediate to advanced level of English. But the way that you can make sure you really do get the score you need is by focusing on the task and coherence and cohesion, which is the structure of your essay, because these 2 criteria are worth 50% of your mark. Even before you get to grammar and vocabulary being evaluated, you can increase the chances of getting the score you need by practicing the structure and the task achievement. And this is where 50% of your mark comes from. And this is where, with practice, you can improve your essays in the quickest way possible and get the score that you need. So let's go through this step by step so that you can write an effective writing task 1 essay when it comes to multiple graphs. So the first thing is we analyze the question. We see that in the first sentence, we're given a brief description of the graphic, and this will come in very useful in just a few moments as we look at how to write the introduction. Then in sentence number 2, we have our instructions. This is our task. It's worth 25% of our mark in writing task 1. Summarize, select and report, and make comparisons. And then we have our picture or graph or chart. And if we follow the instructions carefully, we'll also have a good structure, and that's worth another 25% of our mark. So again, let me just say how important it is to accomplish the task and have a good structure, because overall, this is worth 50% of your score in IELTS writing. So as we decide what we're going to write, we want to plan our essay, and you are given extra note paper to make notes and plan your essay. So we just want to simply ask a few questions to make sure that we kind of have an idea of the kind of information that needs to be included in our essay. And by answering these questions, we may end up having more information than we need, but once we have this overall view and ask ourselves these questions, we'll be able to easily pick out the main features that we want to include in our detailed paragraphs. So we'll look at all this information, and then we'll narrow it down to 2 main features. So we want to look at what information do we have in the axes. Well, in this case, we're not dealing with a line graph or a bar graph, so we don't have to deal with axes. But if we did have a bar graph or line graph, this is what we'll look at. But we do have units of measurement in our pie graph and our table, and these are percentages. We want to look at the time periods. And in this case, there are no time periods mentioned, but if we had a bar graph or a line graph, again, we would want to make sure we look at that. What can we learn from any title and any labels? And this is so important when it comes to pie graphs and table charts. The labels and the title are where we get some of our significant information, and usually where we find the main features that we want to deal with in our detailed paragraphs. So when we look at our titles, we see that the pie graph deals with causes of worldwide land degradation. So we're talking about land degradation, and in the pie chart, we have the causes overall in the world. And then when we look at our table, we still have causes of land degradation, but this time it's by different regions, and we have 3 different regions that we're looking at, and we have the same reasons as we do in the pie chart and the table. So what we're noticing is that there are similarities between the pie graph and the table chart, and that's the reasons or causes, right? We have deforestation, overgrazing, and overcultivation. But in the table chart, the difference is we have 3 different regions, whereas the pie graph only deals with the entire world. We can look for some trends, and we're going to look for similarities, as I just mentioned. And we're going to make these notes on our note paper. And then once we have these notes, we're going to pick out the 2 main features that we're going to put in the detail paragraphs of our essay. And in this case, again, it's quite simple because one main feature is what we see in the pie chart. The biggest cause in the pie chart of land degradation is overgrazing. And in the table where we're dealing with the different regions, we simply notice that Europe has the highest percentage. So what we're doing is we're taking the highest percentage from the pie graph, which is overgrazing as a cause, and then in the table, the highest percentage deals with which region has the highest percentage of degraded land. So the pie chart and the table chart have different display things for different reasons. The pie graph is worldwide, and the table is by region. And this is all we have to notice. Again, we're not going to write about every little detail we see in the table chart or the pie graph. We've just picked out the main features of both, and this is what's going to be included in our detailed paragraphs. Again, we're doing this because we want to avoid writing too much. We only have 4 paragraphs, and that's so that we can not just reach our minimum limit for words, but make sure that we don't go overboard and have too much. You know, writing too much does not display your English to the best of its ability. Being discerning and writing exactly what you're asked to write is where you can show your English to the best of your ability. So we have, just again, as a reminder, we're going to have 4 paragraphs: an introduction, an overview, the details of the first graph or chart, and the details of the second graph or chart. And this is simply our outline for writing this essay. So let's start with the introduction. As I mentioned earlier, we are given a description in the question. The pie chart shows the main reasons for why agricultural land becomes less productive. The table shows how these causes affected 3 regions of the world during the 1990s. So we simply want to take this description that we're given, and put it into our own words, and this becomes our introduction. The pie chart illustrates the primary causes of land deterioration across the globe, while the table outlines how 3 different regions were affected by these damaging factors in the 1990s. So it's quite simple. We've just rephrased the description we were given in our own words. And as you can see, our introduction is not lengthy. It's only 1 sentence, bringing both the pie graph and the table chart together. And this describes what we're putting in our essay. Just remember that in this essay, it's only a description. It's not your opinion. You're not giving reasons. You're only describing and reporting and summarizing what you see in the graph and the chart. So our second paragraph is going to be an overview of what each of the graphs and charts describe. So we can see that it is clear from the pie chart that the main reason why farmland becomes less productive is overgrazing. We've just described the pie chart in one sentence. And then the second sentence of our overview just says the data in the table reveals that Europe had the highest percentage of degraded land compared to North America and Oceania for the period recorded. So our overview has been one sentence about the pie graph and one sentence about the table chart. And now we're going to take each of these sentences and break it down into two paragraphs to give the details of what we see in our graph and chart. So paragraph 3 is just going into detail about the pie chart. The pie chart presents two additional key reasons for the decrease in productivity of agricultural land: deforestation and overcultivation. And although tree clearance is almost as damaging to too many animals, at 30%, it has a 5% lower impact than overgrazing. Excessive cultivation is the least problematic at just over a quarter of the total. So all I've done is looked at the labels and the descriptions and percentages in the pie chart and written a paragraph about that. That's all I've done in paragraph number 3. And then paragraph number 4, I'm just going to write about what I see in the table chart. And I'm just mentioning the percentages that 23% of Europe's agricultural land was affected. And I'm just comparing it to what happened in Oceania. It's double of what happened into Oceania. And then the next affected region, North America, experienced the lowest level at just 5%. So I've just taken those 3 regions and simply described the table chart. And it's as simple as that. Paragraph 1 is my introduction, just one sentence. Paragraph 2 was just 2 sentences, one about the pie graph and one about the table chart. Then paragraph 3 was details about the pie graph, and paragraph 4 was details about the table. So in many ways, coming up with a structure and knowing what to write when it comes to multiple graphs is quite simple, and maybe the simplest type of writing task, one essay to write. And then we have our completed essay. And as you can see, if you were to count the words, it's no more than 200 words, probably somewhere around 190. And this is the perfect length to get the score we need. It's well structured, it's accomplished the task. And so we will get the score we need in writing task 1. Well, I hope you found this helpful, and I want to wish you all the best as you continue to prepare for the IELTS exam.